Hello and welcome to the Car Care on the Shop. Welcome to this 2008 Camry Hybrid. So the decisions that this customer had to make for their cars were a tough one. And in this particular case, this car needs so much work in really two items that it easily totals the car. But the decision for this customer to go ahead with this job is something we're going to discuss as we start with the first big ticket item, replacing the hybrid battery. So we're going to kind of start working on this, and we'll talk along the way some tips on hybrid battery replacements, some DIY, although this is not exactly a DIY job because of the risks involved with the high voltage, but we'll talk about a few things and more right after this. So as we remove this hybrid battery, which by the way starts with popping the seat out, this car has right around 137,000 miles, somewhere around there. I don't think I'll be able to pull this seat from this direction. Sometimes you just have to do, there we go. Just controllably rough with things to pop them out. This comes with experience. This, full disclaimer, the owners of this car are very nice people. They are actually my regular customers, and this is a family car, so the things we're about to see underneath the seat, we're just going to pretend they're not there and not pass judgment. Okay, so the hybrid battery in this car lives somewhere behind the seat. Yes, you can sneak it out from the back, but sneaking out things is not my thing. I'd rather spend an additional 5 minutes, take something out of my way, and work comfortably than be fighting with space. So let me get some tools and let's get this back seat out to continue talking about this one. So this Camry can have two style seats, and I think this one is the easier one. The one that doesn't recline. This is a slightly rusty bolt. If you've never removed seats on Toyotas, these sides come off separate like so. And you might see me slightly struggling, but I'm trying, the camera is in the way, so I'm trying to do this. Normally I would just come from this side and not have to crawl in the car, but I guess we're gonna put this as the things you guys made me do. So this thing, the kind of the side bolster of the back seat, if you ever want to remove it, it has a hook. I hope you can see it clearly on the camera. It has a hook that sits in, so you lift it up and then it comes out. So these are the folding type, which are normally slightly easier to do than the fixed type, the one that has like the little opening in the middle. So for these, here we go. That's I'm remembering, these are much easier because you don't have to remove the actual track. There's two 12s here. Come on. There we go. And then this whole thing just kind of disappears. And then the other one is pretty much the same thing. So the bolts I told you earlier are the ones if you have a fixed type where this doesn't fold down. This one is already behaving nicely. Let's get the seat belt out of here. All right, off she goes. Well, now we're gonna start removing some of these panels, and this clip has a special tool that pulls it very easy, or you can just use a clip tool to remove them. But let's remove all these covers so we can expose the battery. We'll get it out and go from there. So this is how that tool looks like. We'll show you a close-up of it, but remove some of these clips for this panel. Let's see, do we have any more? This is stuff There we go. That's free. And hello, Mr. Battery. This is the hybrid battery. And the venting for it goes all the way up here. And usually you can sneak it by. I don't like to do that because that's how you break things. And this is a very vital component of this battery. So I'm going to do this the long way. This is the long way, which it's not really. This is where automotive repair, you could choose the easy way, the easy, dangerous way, where things might end up getting damaged, or you can just go the long way and then things won't get damaged. Because you see this piece of plastic? It's actually into the package tray over here. So if you just yank it out, you're gonna damage it. But if you take a moment and just pop the package tray up, which this one is already not cooperating. There it is. And there it is. For those who are not familiar with the term package tray, if there's any Toyota technicians watching, Toyota wording. This is translation from Japanese, package tray. I don't know why it's called that, but that's what Toyota calls it in the book. This is the wire for the third brake light. Let's not forget that. It would be nice if we don't forget that. Now the seat belt will be in our way here. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna pop these little panels, and then we're gonna disconnect the seat belt from the bottom, which is a bunch of 14s. Let me get some 14s and we'll get these out. Let's take the seat belt. That's through, and then the other one slightly covered by the track. This is where the Lego effect starts. You take one thing to expose one other thing. This is where you wish car designers would design something and then try to take it apart. See if it's, because if they move this bolt just 1 inch either direction, we wouldn't have to do this, but they didn't, and that's okay. And by that's okay, I mean it's not okay. But what are you gonna do? Okay, last one. Oh, that thing is rusty. Of course, this is a Chicago car. Rusty Land Special. This bolt, because it goes outside, it gets a little on the rusty side. Let's get this through. Okay, our package tray is free for now. Here it is. If you ever want to replace a third brake light, now you know how to. Although this is LED, by the way. So we did all this so the venting would come apart easier and not have to break everything, because I'd rather spend all this time than to have the vent blocked or broken, and then the new battery overheats and then we're back to square one. Kind of curious how this hybrid fan is the battery fan is gonna look like. This car doesn't have mega miles, but it is a family car, so there ought to be a lot of dust and debris. Let us see here. You know, I made one mistake doing this. This car has been parked outside. It's pretty hot outside, And this clip doesn't want to come out. Nope, that clip broke. One more clip on order for this one. Actually, might have a few extra of these same clips. We parked this car outside. It's pretty hot outside. And now, it's like an oven in here. So if you see me sweating, it's not because I'm afraid of the high voltage battery, because it's really hot in here. What have we here? There it is. There we go. So now we go to the trunk, which is a lot cooler than the inside of this car. You're gonna need to disconnect the battery. This thing is connected. I don't think that's how this goes. Well, since we are here, let's unplug our 12-volt battery so we can work freely from here on out. Whenever you work on major electrical components, or for example, if you're disconnecting a lot of connectors under the dash or whatnot, you always want to disconnect the negative terminal of the battery. You can leave the positive one. There it is. And make sure you don't just leave it sitting next to it, because then it could move and hit it and we have potential fireworks. You can leave the positive connected as long as the negative is just away from the negative of the battery. Let's remove these. I think we just, yeah, we have to remove both. Now, from this one, just pop out. And whenever you work on orange wires, pull the plug. This is the service plug for the hybrid battery. Right now, when you pull this plug, you have opened the circuit of the battery, so there's no longer power making it out to the inverter. Two things about this plug. When you install it, obviously don't put your hand in there, but when you install it, and by the way, if you own a hybrid, you should have no business disconnecting this at all, because I see people do what I just did and then the car won't start, because you actually have to go in and press it down. If you don't press it down, car won't start. And the reason for that is there is this little plug right here. When you do this, it's not connected. When you press it, it actually engages, and that opens the interlock, or closes the interlock, actually, in technical term. But this needs to be visible at all times when you're working in the battery. Yes, some people have said this is not a big deal, whatnot. You need to have it visible at all times, because if somebody by mistake takes it and plugs it in while you have hot wires around, you could be in serious trouble. Safety first. So I'm gonna put this on the roof of the car so I can see it at all times, and I know we're working safely here. Now we are kind of making our way to removing this behemoth right here, which means we're gonna have to go back in the hot car. But before we do, just wanna I don't wanna remove this panel completely. I'm just gonna kind of get it loose, move it to the side. I think we're gonna have to remove it completely because there's a vent behind it. Okay, scrap that plan. Thank you, engineers, for doing this for us. So in order to remove this, you have to remove this. So let's do that. Let's remove the sill cover, which has two bolts. There's two. And then this thing should, if you don't have any more clips, there it is. Thought we'd be able to sneak it out past the spare tire cover, but no. There we go. There it is. Then more of these clips. Toyota loves to use these clips at this time period. They're not the greatest clip. This one is broken. It's just super flimsy. This one ain't coming out anymore. There we go. Did all that so we can remove this vent. Well, let's remove this vent. That's out of our way. And this just has a clip here. This is the exhaust vent. which has more clips on the inside. You're gonna see the whole cooling system of the battery once we get this out. Okay. This one has another clip on the other side. This is the exhaust. The fan pulls the air through, and this exhaust just goes out of the vent side of the trunk. So we're gonna remove the fan first. This is just a duct that sits here, and then the inner duct has two bolts here. Once I find them, I'm gonna show that right there. Yep, I already see that duct coming down. So one more clip, and she's out. There is the intake duct for the hybrid battery. Some have mentioned that this is a filter. It is a cleanup filter, but it's not the main filter. This car actually doesn't have a filter, and that's one of the things we're gonna install. So there's that. Now, really everything else comes apart very easily. The fan has a connector. Let's put our seatbelt up. Out of the way. Fan has one connector. There's that. There's this little duct with these clips. You can tell these were the early days of the hybrid battery, because not two clips are the same and everything feels super random. I think there is one more bolt. I'm gonna go get that bolt from the trunk, then we'll pull the fan. How about that? Alrighty. This fan. Oh, this is not bad at all. Hey, you see that fan right there? That is not dirty at all. Just have a little bit. So I guess this battery just ready for retirement, I suppose. Now we have this connector that is attached to the case of the battery. Try to get it out. There it is. And that's it. There's nothing attached here. There is the vent tube. Disconnect right here. And there is one more intake vent, which has two clips. Pull this out. Don't break, don't break. That's the intake vent that connects to the battery. Actually, this is what sends air inside the battery. We're going to look at that. Now, we have to disconnect one thing, and then this battery is coming out. We have to disconnect the cables that go to the front for the inverter that go to the battery. In order to do that, you have this little strange looking clip. The thing about this clip is this is a safety clip. Whenever you see this clip inside the car, you're about to access an area with a high voltage. And this is a little bit of a brilliant engineering from Toyota. The end of the service plug is actually the special tool used to just undo these. And the reason they did it this way, so you would have no choice but to remove the service plug. Just do this. This clip comes right out. So you would have no choice but to undo the service plug to undo this. Now they know for sure you're protected and you didn't forget the service plug. So having removed that, now we are in the clear. Remove this. And then after this is gone, I'm going to remove more covers. There's this little ground here. And remove this little ground strap. And then this There we go. 2 high voltage connectors. Then there's this little ground thing, and then the 2 bolts. 2 nuts actually. Keep saying bolts. That's it. We are disconnected from the car. Just one more connector here, which is a low voltage connector, just for various sensors and the computer and whatnot. Actually, I take that back. There's always the ground. Forgot about that. I'm gonna reattach this nut so this other wire won't come flying out. That's it. 3 high voltage cables are disconnected. I think we are ready to remove the battery, which this one happens to be one of the heavier ones and the biggest ones, except the Highlander might be a little bigger, but Prius a lot smaller than this. There's bolts alongside the case. I don't like, some people like to disassemble it in the car. I don't like to disassemble it in the car. Get it out in one unit, you can swap it over, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But let me get these 12mm bolts so we can start pulling this battery out of this car. And there are a few more bolts through the other side. I'll get them and then we'll get this battery out. Now this battery should be loose. Emphasis on the word should be. Yeah, there it is. Very, very heavy. I'm going to try to move it a little bit. Here it is. Then we're going to carry it out of the trunk. Jose, you're going to have to help me with this one. This battery is a little too heavy for my broken back. Let's remove this battery. Okay, let's remove this battery, Jose. One warning for you, Jose. The edges are extremely sharp. Yep. It's like battery by Gillette. Alright, you got a good grab on it on the other side? Yep. Alright. Just watch your fingers when you set it down.
Set yours down first.
Yeah, I got it.
Got it.
Let's just position it a little bit more centered. There we go. It's out. There's the battery. So this is the hybrid battery. This is one of the largest ones, and this is one of the oldest ones. Nickel metal hydride and very large. So something about batteries, you notice there's 2 sections to it. If you look here, this is a section. This is the actual battery. This is all the computer and the relays and all that. We're going to take all that out so you see it, because we got to swap it to the new one. Speaking of the new one, this is the new one. You notice it comes in this massive box. And Jose made a comment as soon as we got it that this is going to be pretty heavy and big. Is it going to fit through the car? This is actually a much larger container than what the battery is. And this is called, don't quote me on this, I'm just remembering off memory. This is called DRC. I think durable reusable container or something of that nature. Basically, this is the container to securely transport the batteries. There's actually training on how to package the battery. And I remember the first time I ordered a hybrid battery, we opened the shop, the dealership actually asked, hey, we can't just send you a battery. Do you have this training? Yes, I had to send them a certificate and all that, because that's not something the dealership requires, or Toyota. The federal government actually requires it for transportation. Or actually, not federal government, Department of Transportation or something like that. Yeah, maybe that class I've taken it too long ago and not remembering all the little details, but basically the packaging is very specific. And you have to sign your name, who packaged this battery. And this container, of course, is reusable. That's why it looks a little beaten up. This is just for transport. They basically take the hybrid battery, put it in here for transport. Now let's remove the case of the DRC. And here's the battery. with more packaging around it. It's a brand new battery from Toyota, and here is the thing. As I go through the maze of this packaging, many of you will right now stop the video and comment this: why can't you just get an aftermarket battery? It costs half the price of this. Well, here's the problem with the aftermarket batteries, and maybe when we take some of these covers off, you'll start to see it. I am yet to see a company that truly refurbishes this battery. These are actually not the instructions, but this is the transport sheet that we got to fill out. They don't truly refurbish the battery. So this battery has multiple cells, and if you don't replace all of them, you only replace the bad ones. Well, guess what? They're all the same age. So if you replace just two, you left the rest out. A year, one of the other ones will go, and then you'll go back. They'll warranty it. They'll just throw another cell, and then they'll keep doing that until you get tired and you give up. You either sell the car and go get a real battery. That's the problem. And if the aftermarket companies that do this, they replace every single one, and the price would be the same. So why don't you just buy a new one? That's the reality. These cells cost the same thing, and if you replace all of them, well, you've arrived at this price. That's why they're expensive. Let's get this battery out and let's start swapping things over, because there's a lot to swap over here. There's some dangerous stuff that we're going to do with high voltage here, so let's do that. All right, let's remove this hose, remembering the metal is made by Gillette. All right, got it? Awesome. Let's watch the car. Watch your hands, set yours down. All right, sitting on there, let's just position it a little better. Right there. That's good. I like this. So hybrid batteries, when they come in, they don't come in with all the computers and the relays and all this stuff. So we're gonna have to swap them over. Usually this stuff doesn't really wear down, it's the battery itself that does. But let's start removing some of these covers, and there's that vent that we tried to remove in the car, which has a clip in it. Get rid of this clip. Then we remove this very big cover. There it is. That's the whole stuff that we have to swap over. So, first thing is the orange wires. You gotta be careful with these orange wires. You don't just handle them with negligence, because there is actually a situation where you connect these wires in a way and you become the ground, and that's bad news. We're gonna start by removing the orange wire carefully, trying not to touch terminals together. There's a ground wire all the way at the bottom. There it is. These big wires you do want to be careful with if you're ever doing this yourself. Now this is one of the safer ones, because you're not directly bolting onto the bus of the battery, but still you gotta be aware that you are working with high voltage, and things are not just, you can't work with negligence. You gotta be aware of your surroundings. Never touch wires you're not supposed to touch. This is the this black behemoth. That is the relay block. These are the main the system main relays, SMR. I think it's SMRP and SMRG. So when you start your hybrid, you hear like a bunch of clicking, then the car comes on. These are actually the relays that click. What these relays will do, they'll power on for a second, then power off. And the computer has a way to check resistance of the wire that goes all the way to the front. If it notices any high resistance or there's like a short to ground or something, it'll actually kill these and the car won't start. This is just a safety in case there's rodent damage, wire damage, whatnot. It'll immediately disengage these two and we have no issues. We're gonna install this last, and this is very important that we get the order of things. Then we're gonna get some of these. There's a zip tie here. This is a very Japanese zip tie. Let's remove that. Let's cut this little factory zip tie. Actually, so brittle it just broke. That's okay. I don't know why they do this. They put a zip tie from the factory, but they did. That's okay. Here is the battery sensor. Basically the main battery computer. Unplug the stuff off of it. This is the battery computer, and then I have to get a trim tool. This just happens to be one of the possibly busiest weeks in the shop. All my tools are all over the place. We have 2 evaporators apart. Let's just say that we have a lot going on here this week. Then we have this little mini vent. There's that mini vent. And then one more connector. This connector, they're actually not high voltage wires, but because it goes inside the battery, this is like the various temperature sensors and voltage sensors inside the battery. They're all connected here. And then this wire actually comes with the battery. This is the low voltage side of things. This is like, this actually, I'm sorry, I might have said this backwards. This is temperature sensors. The orange one is voltage for individual cells voltage. A little contraption here. Once we get it out, should be able to swap it out. All right, that is the last component. And this is the converter assembly. Last thing, we do have one little junction block here. We're going to swap over. And now, we pretty much have everything out of the old battery. We are ready to assemble the new battery. We're going to get some of these connectors off. So you start assembling this by putting first component, last component first. And this is the key thing here. This was the last thing we removed. This is the first thing we install. We're going to torque these to spec because some of these high voltage junction blocks, if you get a crack in them, we have problems. Let's torque this guy down. There we go, 71 inch-pounds. Then the converter goes in first. This converter actually has a fan, which is very, very clean. Yeah, this is clean. We're good. So this is the first cable that goes through. you're not going to touch that. Okay. Now we figure out the maze of everything, which is we already plugged this in before. See, this is how this becomes very intricate, because the routing of these wires are very important. If you don't route them right, we have all kinds of problems. This goes right here, because that's the wire we disconnected at the bottom. This one is here. This one goes here as well. The high voltage cables route through here. Tool gonna fit? It's not gonna fit. We'll just do this by hand. There we go. I'm gonna separate these two. Separate these three. Cool. And the fan goes next. This is gonna situate some of these cables here. Let me install this vent and then we'll see what we got here. So now this one goes in here alongside these. Once I get it. Nice. There you go. So section underneath all these. There it is. And these go right here. There we go. I kinda like the routing of this. Trying to make sure this actually goes on the outside. Outside these. There we go. I like this. This is working. I like it. Let's keep going, because the next thing we're going to put on is our smart computer. That's what they call it. It's actually, now that this is basically a 2007 2011 system, it's technically second gen hybrid system, but it's not really. It's kind of a weird second gen. It's not smart at all by today's standards. And now we untangled these wires. For some reason these came tangled up. They usually don't. Here, click on this one. There it is. Now make sure we plug this in, because if we don't, we're in trouble. I think we got pretty much everything up to this point. This goes here. All we got to do is get our relay block, which is this one right here. Get it situated. It is not situated because this little baby wire. Okay, from experience, never impact this because they love to crack and they are extremely expensive, these relays.
'Cause you notice, as expensive as the battery is, these did not come with it. You gotta swap the old ones out. So don't just go wailing at it with an impact. These are also 71 inch-pounds. And then we'll get some little wires in here. And then the last thing here is this way.
Okay. Did you notice a pattern here? You have this vent. Let me put it on before we forget. This is a very important vent. I left these two for last because these two wires are actually what sends power from the battery. And you connect these, there's a possibility that you might create the short pin or the service plug. So you leave those for last. When you're done, you're good. Now this is this style battery, which is a little bit on the safer one. The ones that you have to directly bolt this to the bus of the battery, you have to wear insulated gloves, because if you touch two wires at the same time, you might create a path to ground, and now we have major problems. Before we move on though, this was a common mistake. That is,
It's a very, very common mistake to be forgotten. There's this little vent
that actually doesn't come with the battery.
and if you don't swap them over, we have major problems. So let me do that now before we continue.
The last thing before we cover everything up is this little cover. Sure we're not forgetting anything, which we are not. That's it. This is all swapped over. Now we connect our wires. That's it. Now we just gotta put the covers and we're good. Now we put our first big cover. That's it. Battery is assembled. You notice these two bolts that we don't have here. They actually give you new bolts for the fan that has new bushings. So we're going to swap those when we install the fan. This point, before we put it back in the car, we're going to shut off the camera and I'm going to double check everything, make sure we're not forgetting anything, because we do not want to put all this back in the car, assemble the whole car, and then find out we forgot something. That wouldn't be cool, would it? So catch you guys back when we're ready to assemble. And here's what we're going to do actually for assembly. We're going to put you on a time lapse so I can actually tell you the story of this car. We got too busy with the job. I never told you what decisions the customer had to make for this car. So let's put you guys on a time lapse and we'll talk about it. So this car has been in our shop multiple times since our opening for regular maintenance, regular checkups, whatnot. This is the original owners of this car. This car is in decent shape. They've taken care of it over the years. The car has right around 140,000 miles, somewhere in that range. So one time they called us up. They're like, the car feels underpowered. Check hybrid message is on. Check engine light is on. We want to bring it in to check it out. We checked it out. It had a battery code. They did tell us that the car sat for a while. This is an owner that Feels like they've gotten their money's worth out of this car, have driven it since it was new, up to this miles, and now their daughter's going to college. They need a car for her. And they're debating, should they move on from this car, give her this car, is this car safe? But then the battery started acting up. So initially, the car sat for a while because they bought another car. And when we got the car, I checked the battery voltages. They were all good. I erased the codes. I actually drove it for a little bit. We put like 20 miles on it. It was fine. The code never came back. Battery was behaving good. And the conversation with them at the time was, hey, this battery potentially is getting weak, but it's not completely gone. So we erased the code. It's driving fine now. Try not to let it sit for a long time, and let's see what happens. Well, as it turns out, they were not able to drive it every day, or at least regularly enough. The battery failed again, set a code. Basically, these hybrid batteries, when they fail, they'll set a code, and the hybrid system will force the engine to be on all the time. The car will be very underpowered. It won't rely on the battery as much because it thinks the battery is incapable of, it's just going to reserve it for reverse and just starting the engine. That's it. It won't use it for anything else. It'll just continuously charge it all the time, which, by the way, you can continue to drive the car, but don't drive at high speeds. That's how Toyota hybrids and Lexus hybrids as well of this style. But then we had another issue. ABS light came on. Now the brakes were not as responsive, and that's when they were really concerned. And then it sat for a little bit until we got to the appointment date, whatnot. They brought me the car, and we found out that the ABS actuator had an internal leak. It was continuously cycling until it overheats, and then it sets a code, and basically you have no brake actuator. The brakes are revert to limp home mode, and now the brakes are really hard to press. So at this point, this is a decision they had to make. Let's talk about the costs, because the estimate I gave them, I remember I called the owner of this car. I told him, hey, I have some bad news. The actuator is acting up, and the battery is really, this time, we erase the code, we drive it, it comes back shortly after that. One cell, I don't remember which exact cell it was, but one cell was just not coming up in voltage. So I told them, we're reaching that point where now we're at a turning point. Is this worth fixing? The battery cost was, and this is, be seated for this one, these batteries are pretty expensive, was $4,200, and then the actuator was $1,600, almost $660. So a grand total of just over $5,800. Well, I told the owners of this car, look, do you feel like you have your money's worth out of this car at this point without spending this? They were like, absolutely. This car has been one of the greatest cars we've had. We really haven't done much, but just maintenance, you know, oil changes, fluids, whatnot, tires, brakes. Really haven't. This is the first time in all the time that we've owned it since it was new that it has had actual issues. It did have an oil burning issue that was fixed under the campaign, so I knew the engine was good. Maintenance was good. They really took care of this car. It's even clean. Rust levels are low. I tell them, look, this is a little bit of a tough one, and you're going to need to really think about this one, because spending $5,800 on this car, I mean, this car as it sits is not worth $5,800. Maybe if it had a working battery and no ABS problem, it would be worth a little bit more than that, but as it sits, it's not worth that. But here's the thought process, and this is something I try to talk to customers as they come in the shop before they make these big decisions and spend big money on cars. It's very important that you do your math and really get the full picture so you can make a decision. Their question to me was, is this car healthy otherwise? I mean, the engine's healthy, body's clean, brakes are good, it has brand new tires actually, and the rest of the car, it's in good shape. If this had a good battery and a good actuator for the brakes, this would be a car I'd say it's in excellent shape. I mean, yeah, you look underneath to see it a little bit. Remember, this is a family car, but overall, it's a pretty clean car. So this is their thought process. They're giving this car to their daughter, who will be driving far away, I think 2-3 hours from where we're at, from where they live. And she's going to use it for college. Not going to put mega miles on it. She's going to commute back and forth and then take that 2-3 hour trip every once in a while to come back home for holidays or whatnot. Their thought process was that they did not want to spend a lot on a car for their daughter. It's her first car. She's just starting to drive, and they do not want to put, you know, a lot of money into a newer car. So their thought process was, and I guess they researched this, and this is what they told me exactly, and it kind of makes sense.
They wanted a similar size car. They feel comfortable in this car. They feel putting their daughter in this car is a safe car. And I agree. This generation Camry was a really good one. Well, they researched similar cars, you know, a hybrid Camry of this generation. They were more expensive than their car, and of course, these are original owners. They know their car. When they went to test drive them, they were in worse shape than theirs. I mean, this car has good struts, suspension's good, quiet, you know, doesn't have any rust on the body, whatnot. They didn't like what they saw. So in their head, okay, so this car is worth nothing. Let's say it's worth nothing at this point, because they feel like they already got their money's worth out of it. Their thought process was, we're going to pretend we're buying another car for her at $5,800, and we'll have this car, because basically with hybrids, if the engine's been rebuilt, which this one has by the campaign when the 2AZ was burning oil, and the hybrid battery is new, and now the brake actuator is new. Well, these are some of the 3 top problems for this generation hybrid that would basically total the car. If we have all these taken care of, we're going to drive this car potentially another 10 years without really big issues. And looking at the rest of the car, I see it. I mean, this is a good car. You took care of this car from day one. Battery just got old. The ABS actuator is actually a common problem for these. These were the early days of brake actuators, and even it went a little bit further than that in the generation of hybrids. But that was the thought process. And folks, I want you to take from this, some people will immediately say, well, I don't want to total my car. I don't want to spend more money fixing the car than what it's worth. What it's worth is subjective. The only point where you got to think about is if you live in a high accident area, you live in a big city where the cars are getting crashed all the time. The only problem with spending the same amount that the car is worth on a car to fix it is insurance, because the insurance company will not see that. They'll only pay you what the car is worth, not what you spent on it. That's the only risk you take, kind of spending what the car is worth on a car to fix it. But this customer, in the end, they were very happy. Actually, the job turned out really well. We did the brakes off camera, and we drove the car. I really like this car. I mean, it's in excellent shape, quiet, suspension is good, everything else is good. I think they did the right decision for them. But that doesn't mean that's the same decision you should be making. Because the first thing we look at when we get a car that is nearing its total value, basically, with a repair, I look at the rest of the car. And in this case, this car was worth it. But I've had a lot of cases where I tell the owners, listen, I don't think this is a good idea. This car is too far gone for much lesser repairs. If we have severe rust in this car, the transmission is a question mark, the interior is deteriorated, and you know, it needs brakes, and it needs tires, and it needs this, and it needs that, and it just, the list continues on, then yes. But in this case, that was not the case. So in my opinion, I think this customer had good logic. They thought, they did the research and did it right.
So there you have it, folks. This is a hybrid battery all wrapped up. We still have that brake booster to take care of for this customer, and then even with the hybrid battery, we still got to go in, erase the codes, go take it for a drive, make sure everything's good, make sure that battery is charging, discharging at a good rate. In case there are issues, recast them now. Historically, there has, at least that I have experienced, I've done a lot of hybrid batteries. I haven't really experienced issues with Toyota hybrid batteries from the box. I haven't really seen that before, but you still have to make sure, and that's the whole point. So I will leave this one to you. Do you think the owner of this car had sound logic putting this much money into this car in the times that we are in, and what do you think about their decision to fix this car instead of moving on from it and buying something else for their daughter? Folks, I hope this video is helpful, informative. I hope you learned something new. If you like it, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, consider subscribing to the channel. Check out some of my other videos. And until the next video, folks, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you have yourself a wonderful day.